Welcome to AM Auto. The dawn was still young, its pale orange glow stretching gently across the horizon, when the 2026 Yamaha XT 500 rumbled to life. That first ignition was more than a spark inside a metal chamber, it was a heartbeat being restored, a legend awakening after decades of silence. For riders who had grown up hearing stories of the original XT 500 carving its way across deserts, mountains, and rally stages, this moment felt almost mythical. The single-cylinder thump that once defined an era had returned, but now it carried with it a new pulse, more refined, more modern, and yet still unmistakably XT at its core. The road ahead was a ribbon of gravel and dust, loose and unpredictable, but the XT 500 stood ready. Its tall stance captured the same rugged silhouette that made its ancestor world famous, yet the details hinted at its evolution. The updated LED headlight cut sharply through the morning haze, while the redesigned tank blended old-school simplicity with modern engineering. It was as if Yamaha had taken the soul of the 1970s 6 icon and poured it into a body forged for 2026. Lightweight, purposeful, and sturdy in a way only a true dual-sport machine could be. The rider eased forward, feeling the balanced weight distribution beneath him. The new chassis, built with a focus on agility, carried the motorcycle with a kind of precision that felt effortless even on uneven surfaces. Each twist of the throttle delivered a surge of torque, smooth, responsive, and controlled. Though modern emissions and engineering standards had transformed the original air-cooled character into a more efficient power plant, the 500cc single still carried that satisfying heartbeat that defined the XT legacy. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It was confident. As the bike picked up speed, the wind pressed against the rider's jacket, the world around him beginning to blur into streaks of green and gold. The gravel track shifted into a narrow forest trail, where roots, rocks, and dips tested every bit of the bike's suspension. The XT remained poised, the updated front forks absorbing impacts with a refined smoothness, while the rear suspension kept the tail steady. It felt like riding through the pages of history and innovation at once, the reliability of the past fused with the precision of the present. There was something poetic about how the XT 500 handled terrain. It didn't dominate the landscape, it cooperated with it. Every movement, from small adjustments of body weight to the subtle feedback of the handlebars, created a language between machine and rider. The forest grew denser, the trail narrowing until only a thin strip remained, carved between towering trees. Still, the XT managed with grace. Its narrow frame and predictable handling made maneuvering through tight sections feel almost meditative. The trail eventually opened into a wide clearing, sunlight pouring through in warm, golden sheets. The rider slowed, letting the engine idle. The single-cylinder beat settled into a calm, rhythmic thump, steady like a heartbeat synced with nature. Birds darted overhead, and a breeze brushed through the trees, momentarily drowning out the engine. This was the kind of place the XT 500 was built for. Not the polished highway or the urban grid, but the wild, the untamed, the places where roads fade into memory. After a brief pause, the journey continued. The clearing led to a long descent toward a river valley, where loose stones and unexpected dips made the ride tricky. Yet the XT glided down with a kind of dignified confidence. The traction control, subtle and minimally intrusive, gave just enough support without stealing the spirit of the ride. Yamaha had been careful with its modern touches. Nothing felt too digital or overly assisted. It stayed raw, enough to keep the ride exciting but refined enough to make it smoother than the XT of old. Reaching the valley floor, the rider pushed through shallow water crossings. The splash against the frame, the shimmering droplets catching sunlight, the echo of the engine bouncing off riverbanks, it all came together like an adventure sequence written long before the rider arrived. The XT 500 didn't flinch. Water rolled off its high-mounted exhaust, and the engine maintained its rhythm without hesitation. It was moments like these that demonstrated Yamaha's intent, a machine meant to transcend pavement, age, and limitations. The trail wrapped up into a steep climb, rocky and uneven. Here, the XT truly showcased its strength. The torque delivered at low RPMs allowed it to crawl forward without strain, gripping at each opportunity. The rider leaned forward, feeling the suspension work tirelessly beneath him. One slip, one miscalculated twist, and the bike could have lost momentum. But it never faltered. It clawed its way up the slope until finally cresting the ridge, where the world opened once again into a panorama of mountains stretching into the horizon. At the summit, the wind howled with intensity, yet the XT stood firm. The rider brought the machine to a stop and shut off the engine. Silence draped over the mountaintop, broken only by the gusts brushing past. The motorcycle, now resting, gleamed under the sun. Dust clung to the tires and lower frame, while the top surfaces remained clean, almost symbolic of its journey, tested, challenged, but never overwhelmed. This moment wasn't just about scenery, it was about heritage. The XT500 had always been a machine that represented freedom, durability, and adventure. The 2026 version carried those ideals into a new age. With modern brakes, lighter materials, improved fuel efficiency, and enhanced ergonomics, it made long rides more accessible than ever. Yet none of those advancements overshadowed the spirit that made the XT iconic. It was still a machine that encouraged you to go further, explore deeper, and trust the path less traveled. The rider sat beside the bike, removing his gloves and placing a hand on the warm tank. The metallic surface hummed faintly, still radiating the energy of the climb. Somewhere deep inside the engine, the spirit of the original XT seemed to whisper, stories of Dakar rallies, of early adventurers, of countless journeys across continents. This was a machine built not just to be ridden but to be lived with, to be trusted in moments where nature challenges human limits. After a long pause, the rider stood, ready for the descent. The engine roared back to life, echoing triumphantly across the ridge. With one final look at the vast, untamed expanse before him, he leaned forward and began the journey down, the 2026 Yamaha XT500 carrying him toward whatever adventure waited next.